All right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's innovation session, Bouncing Back, Building Your Hybrid Season, sponsored by Overture Plus. My name is Robbie Ali, and I am the Senior Programs Associate at the Association of Performing Arts Professionals. Closed captioning for this webinar will appear automatically on your screen. If you would like to disable the chat transcript, please click More on the bottom of the Zoom window and hide subtitle. APAP is located on our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., on the ancestral lands of the Piscataway and the Anacostan people who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. I would like to pay my respect to the Piscataway and the Anacostan elders, both past and present. And now I will hand it off to Ashley Dinges, Chief Operating Officer at Overture Plus for today's session. Ashley?
Thank you, Robbie. We're really thrilled to be here. We've seen a lot of you at the APAP conference back in January, so it's nice to see some familiar faces here today. And in thinking about how we were hosting this session today, we really wanted to try to make this as valuable to you as possible. So we've asked, and they have graciously accepted, our wonderful clients, Actors Theater of Louisville and the Wilma Theater, to join us today in discussion, talking about best practices. Both of them have been streaming since last year and have a lot of insights to share. And so we're very excited to have them in discussion with us today. We'll also have a bit of interactivity at the end with a demo. So I'm just going to run through the schedule for the day, and then we'll get started. I would invite you to please feel free to submit a question in the Q&A box at any point during the session today. Just note that it's a little bit easier if you submit the question in the Q&A versus the chat. And we will be looking at the questions during the discussion period with our guests. We'll also be able to take questions following the demo if you have specific questions about the Overture Plus technology. So please feel free to interact with us throughout the hour, and we will take those questions when we have those two question and answer periods. So I am delighted to tell you just a little bit about our clients who are joining us today. They are currently both 2021 Drama League nominees in the same category, so for Outstanding Digital Theater Individual Production. Actors Theater of Louisville is nominated for their production of Where Did We Sit on the Bus? That is still streaming, so you'll hear a little bit more from Zachary Miker Buzzy about this production, how it was filmed, and you can also still stream it. So we'll have some information about that when we get to that portion. And then we will hear from Bill D'Agostino about Heroes of the Fourth Turning, which closed a few months ago from the Wilma Theater. And he will also be speaking about their upcoming production, Fat Ham, which will be available in the coming weeks. So these two productions were filmed in very different ways, and we'll get a sense of what it took to kind of to create these really beautiful pieces of content. So congratulations also to our clients on your nominations. After our group discussion, I will run through a demo of the Overture Plus technology. So you'll hear more about that when we get to that point. But basically, the platform can handle any type of content that you're trying to do. It's extremely customizable. It can also meet all of your union and rights requirements. So we'll talk about the ways you can customize the platform to meet your needs in terms of client interactivity. It's also flexible pricing. So we've really tried to create as easy a bar to entry as possible using the platform. We also have an affiliate content sharing library. So if you're not sure if you're going to produce content, you want to try something out, or maybe you don't have the capacity to produce content, we'll also talk about our profit sharing model where it's very little risk to participate. So you can test the waters and see what works for your clients and your customers. And we'll get to that at the end too, as well as an opportunity to participate in a really exciting new production that we just announced yesterday called Breathe, which I will get to at the end of the presentation today. And I just wanted to say up front, we took into account a lot of the audience and customer feedback in both the APAP surveys and in surveys that we've done as well. So the things that we're going to focus on today are primarily creating on-demand content. Our platform can support live content, but we're really going to focus on on-demand for today's production. So producing high quality content for on-demand streaming, also monetization and marketing, as well as a little bit of talking about screen fatigue. So that has been something that's coming up a lot. I just wanted to set the stage with this data to share. When we do audience surveys, people tend to self-report a preference for on-demand content. We also saw that reflected in yesterday's on sale of Breathe, which is a Broadway production. Again, I'll get to that a little bit later, but many opportunities for live interaction there, but most customers preferred on-demand. So again, that's going to be the focus of today. So just framing that conversation. And with that, I would love to introduce our CEO of Overture Plus, Seth Greenleaf. Seth is also the CEO of G4 Productions, where I also work with him, as well as Greenleaf Productions. And he produces both on and off Broadway, in the West End, touring, and international as well. And his most recent work includes The Inheritance, which is currently nominated for the Tony for Best Play. So welcome, Seth, and love to hear from you.
All right. Hi, Ashley. Thanks. Welcome, everybody. So Ashley and I started this as we were kind of spinning our wheels in the early stages of the pandemic, having really no idea that it would last this long, but knowing that as a production company, we needed to be producing. And we went back through some of our shows that we had recorded for internal purposes to see if any of them could be edited and potentially be broadcast worthy. Two of our shows, Menopause the Musical and the play Middletown, we had done pretty decent recordings of and thought, yeah, these could potentially work. And especially at this weird time where people were going to be searching for content, missing theater. There was a huge slew of people that had actually bought tickets for Middletown in Chicago when we had to close halfway through our run. And we had multiple bookings of Menopause around the country. So we put these together, and one of the first things we did was go back to those venues, go back to the theaters that were going to be presenting Menopause that already had Middletown running. And we said, look, we have this idea of putting this stuff up, and we have this other idea of including you kind of as an affiliate distributor and doing a rev share with you. They loved the idea because obviously they weren't able to do anything at the time. And this was so early, they couldn't even look into options of recording content for themselves because everything was shut down. And so it was a really nice model that made a lot of sense. I think that we were very encouraged, especially by the success of Menopause, both that audiences were going to be willing to watch it, that, you know, with some hand-holding, we were going to get them past their fear of technology. And the feedback was great. Ashley and I sat down afterwards and we said, well, this clearly, there's something here. It works, people enjoy it. Where do we go next? And one of the questions that we got asked from the venues that participated in the distribution was, what else have you got? And so we sat down with the company whose technology we had leased. And we had, by that point, we had a long list of improvements that we wanted to make. And we just went into a formal partnership with them. And we started Overture Plus. We started reaching out to content creators that we knew who had recorded content in an effort to create a library so that these theaters could push material out and bridge the gap until they got to the point where maybe they potentially had material. And that was sort of the inception of all of this. One of the things that's the most exciting to me is I have always been on the side of content sharing. I've always been on the side of, you know, get material out there and realize that we in our theater business are competing for attention against every form of entertainment that exists. That includes every live event. It includes Netflix and Amazon Prime and things that keep people very comfortable on their couch. And so I think that this is something that's always needed to happen. And it took this pandemic to get us into an opportunity to do this. And now I think we have to really take advantage of this opportunity and forge ahead. So the naysayers up to this point had sort of always believed that anything that competes with the live experience or going to the live experience was a detriment to our industry. And I don't believe that at all. There's many case studies that prove that absolutely wrong, from Chicago running on Broadway after the film came out to many, many things, including from 1943, when Oklahoma was the first cast album. There was a very big debate on Broadway as to whether or not releasing a cast album would destroy the need for people to come and see shows live. And of course, we know that cast albums are the #1 marketing tool for live theater. Same thing with rock concerts. Selling CDs of a band has never diminished its live sales. It's only ever improved them. So once again, we find ourselves back in this place to take advantage of something that directly addresses two of the challenges that we've discussed in our industry for years, which is how do we create more diversity in our audiences and how do we create an easier point of entry. Streaming potentially does both of these things. We don't have to satisfy 90% of our subscriber base to put up a show that might be skewed one direction or a bit controversial, or maybe just something that we're trying out for the first time. You just need to create niche audiences. But for the venues, for the affiliates, it's an opportunity to go out there, have something to sell something in conjunction with their live theater, test market new shows, and hopefully cultivate new audiences. So on those levels, and for about 100 other reasons, we're really excited about the potential here. One other thing I will say is, regionally, one of the challenges with that model is you tend to close a hit and run a flop. And this creates an opportunity to not have to be stuck in that model anymore. Perfect example is Where Do We Sit on the Bus and Heroes of the Fourth Turning. This is an opportunity for successful shows like that that have a really good production, are on topic with something that people care about, to go well beyond their normal subscriber base and to do so in a way that helps other theaters distribute content and rev share. So this model is potentially good for everyone. And in no way should that inhibit what another theater is doing, but it gives them a chance to also test market material for their audience, which we've seen with Menopause in Middletown, where venues who distributed it for us came back and said, hey, we want to discuss booking this show when we get back into live presentations. So anyway, there's a lot of really exciting conversations on the table. One of the things I want to make sure we address today, so please speak up, is what are your points of resistance? We've worked really hard to address those, but there's always something that might be holding theaters back, and we'd love to discuss that, because if somebody's thinking that, probably others are as well.
Thank you, Seth. And just as a reminder for folks who are just joining us, if you would like to submit a question, we'll be taking those at 2 specific points, but please feel free to use the Q&A feature at any point, specifically also to Seth's point, if you have questions about things that are holding you back, things that are points of resistance, and we will tap into the knowledge of our amazing guests. So it's my pleasure to welcome Zachary Miker Buzzy from the Actors Theater of Louisville, who is going to talk to us about their production of Where Did We Sit on the Bus, which is currently streaming now, and you can still watch it. And please take the mic, Zach. We'd love to hear from you.
Great, thanks, Ashley. And Seth, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that cast album now later on this afternoon. That's an earworm. So I'm Zachary Miker Buzzy. I'm the artistic manager at Actors Theater of Louisville, and have helped our artistic team go on this crazy journey over the last year and a half or so. So just to give everyone a quick introduction into how we found our way into this work, and specifically with Where Did We Sit on the Bus. Actors Theater of Louisville, one of our primary programs that we're known for is the Humana Festival of New American Plays, which we've been running for over 50 years. And that program, in March of 2020, we were in the middle of opening our 3rd show when the governor of Kentucky announced that all public gatherings needed to be shut down. And so we had 3 productions at that point that had either gotten through tech or were getting ready to open, that within the course of about 5 days, we decided we were going to put together a package where we brought in a professional film crew here in Louisville to film the production. And we really didn't have any idea of what we were going to be doing with that. We had no idea if there would be an opportunity for us to offer it to patrons that had not had a chance to see the show during the run. But we just knew that we needed to capture some record of the art and the work that these artists had done. So after capturing that and starting to work with Actors Equity Association as well as the licensors, we were very fortunate to be able to turn around a couple of productions and release them on a video on demand platform for the first time. It's not something that Actors Theater had ever thought that it would find itself in, but we're lucky in that it kind of made us jump into the deep end of this digital platform making that we've now been on a journey of for the last year and a half. So at that point, the Humana Festival is also typically the end of our fiscal year, the end of our season. And so at that point, we had already sold our entire subscription package for the 2022 season, 2021 season. And so we found ourselves very quickly after we'd released these two projects saying, okay, well, we have, all of these subscribers that are invested in us. We've contacted them. A lot of them said, you know what, we just want you to continue to survive, do the work that you can do in this difficult time, and didn't ask for refunds. And so we said, what are we going to be doing for the next year? We kind of had leadership early on that knew that this was going to probably be a long haul and that we weren't going to be able to produce anything in person for at least a year. And so we set about the task of trying to figure out which of the productions that had already been scheduled to be live and in person might actually be able to translate over into a digital platform and what that might look like. So one of the prime examples that we're most proud of and has been a success was with Where Do We Sit on the Bus, which is written by Brian Quijada. Brian Quijada is an actor and a playwright who had been in actually a Humana Festival production of ours a few years ago called Airness. And we were excited about this show. It's a one-person reflection on being a young Latinx person in the United States, being in class learning about the civil rights movement and just having some identity questions about where does the Latin community find itself in that movement and kind of who are we in America. And the plan had been potentially to have Brian come and do the production live at Actors Theater. And we were just lucky enough to be able to have a playwright that we had a relationship with, that we went to him and said, you know what, we're really interested in making a digital version of this entirely remotely within the actor that we end up hiring's home, and with a team of editors, lighting designers, and a director who will be doing this all remotely, which is a pretty, as anyone can imagine from the start of the pandemic, was a pretty big thing for people to bite off and take a bite of and chew on. But it turned out incredibly well. It was a great collaboration. And what's great about that offering is that now we've been able to have hundreds and hundreds of school-age students watch the production over the last year. There have been thousands of people that are both our patrons and also new to Actors Theater that have gone on demand and been able to rent the production through Overture Plus. And there's potential for extending that project more into the future into other companies, because this is a story that we feel like is an American story that could make a lot of sense in a lot of different markets and a lot of different communities. So that's kind of the journey we've taken to this point. And back to you, Ashley.
Thank you, Zach. We will be talking a little bit more in detail, and I see there's already a great question. We'll be addressing that one in the discussion period. Before we get there, I would love to invite our second guest, Bill D'Agostino from Wilma Theater, to talk a little bit about Heroes of the Fourth Turning and also Fat Ham, which is coming up, both for digital. So thank you for being here, Bill.
Great, thanks for inviting me, Ashley. Overture's been an amazing partner in this journey. We came to them at first because they had the kind of restrictions we needed for a certain rights contract, and we stayed with them because their customer service and their flexibility has just been terrific. So I'm happy to support them here and to tell the story of our season and of Heroes of the Fourth Turning and Fat Ham. So when everything shut down a year ago, we had just changed our leadership model. In February 2020, we announced that our former artistic director, our current artistic director, would become a co-artistic director, being joined by 3 new co-artistic directors in a shared leadership model that we were starting. And then a month later, everything closed down. And so we were primed. That sort of history of innovation and experimentation and bold thinking is in our DNA at the Wilma Theater. I'm with the marketing director of the Wilma Theater in downtown Philadelphia. So we've been on quite a journey, similar to what Actors Theater was talking about over the last year, about iterating and trying different things. When we first shut down in March, we had a fundraiser and one more show in our season, both of which we turned digital. Our fundraiser we did over Zoom and various digitally captured ways to kind of stitch together a live cabaret performance and some Q&As and some behind the scenes stuff that we had in the can already. And then the final show of our last season, we turned into an audio production. We sent microphones throughout the city of Philadelphia to our performers, and they recorded them in their house concurrently with other performers. And we had just announced, we were just secured our 2021 season, starting with Heroes of the Fourth Turning, which, if you don't know, was a huge hit in New York and a Pulitzer Prize finalist about a group of conservative Catholics coming back to their alma mater in Wyoming, and having fierce intellectual debates and trying to understand where they fit in this new country that they found themselves in. And it was a huge hit in New York, and we were excited we were going to be one of the first theaters to present it in the regional theater. And then we had to figure out how to present it. And so we had played around a little bit in that interim between when we closed down and when rehearsals were supposed to start with a film project. Our artistic director and the director of Heroes of the Fourth Turning did a project with two of our hothouse. We have a core company of actors, an acting company, a hothouse acting company that are with us, and we've kept them on through the year. And so a couple of those, and the director created this production Code Blue, and we're experimenting with film and digital capture and how to do that from home. But we knew that for Heroes of the Fourth Turning, we needed bodies in space. They needed to be able to communicate together, the dialogue between the actors and the reactions to the debates and the conversations and the revelations that happen in the Heroes of the Fourth Turning was just too important to do over Zoom. It was too vital to have that debate, to do it over Zoom or to do it remotely. And so we worked with SAG and got an agreement to do a quarantine bubble, where we rented a bunch of Airbnbs in the Poconos in the mountains north of Philadelphia, where we housed the whole production, the whole bare bones production crew. So two cameramen, two camera people, two sound designers and sound engineers, a COVID safety officer, and we tested everybody. We rehearsed over Zoom for a week and then rehearsed and captured in the Poconos this beautiful production of this play. Yeah, and so that's how we captured Heroes of the Fourth Turning, and we learned a lot from that experience. We got some great attention in Wall Street Journal, and the New York Times gave us great reviews, and we really reached a new audience with this production. We marketed it, of course, to our subscribers. We had already had renewals by that period. And of course, they were kind of the core audience that we wanted to make sure we were reaching and staying engaged in. But we also used it as an opportunity to spread our wings nationally. And so people from 49 of 50 states ended up watching that production. South Dakota, where were you? And now we've learned a lot from that production, and we're bringing what we've learned to our upcoming production of Fat Ham, which I'll put here in the chat, which is a world premiere production by one of our new co-artistic directors, James Iams. And it's an adaptation or a modern take on the Hamlet story with a Black queer family at the center. Not Shakespeare verse at all, modern contemporary language. And so that's currently being edited, kind of similar to how we did Heroes of the Fourth Turning, with a little bit of a twist. Rather than two cameras and getting reaction shots, this is kind of keeping the spirit of theater with these long takes. And so we're following the characters as they walk around, where we're staying on them for longer periods. Again, to kind of keep that real-time feel. The play happens over the course of almost 2 hours, and so we follow along with them. Yeah, and so we're releasing that in a couple of weeks. One of the things that excites me about digital as the marketing director is that you get a lot more leeway, right? We're in the process of editing our trailer right now for a show that opens in 2 weeks. Normally in theater, right, we're kind of cutting a trailer. If we're lucky enough to get a trailer and have the funds for that, we're kind of doing that at the last minute. Maybe it gets out by opening, maybe it gets by the end of previews. But here we have some time. So I think that, you know, in addition to the great press we got for Heroes of the Fourth Turning, having that trailer and the ability to edit that trailer with press quotes early was really essential for getting the word out, and I think really allowed us to have a really successful production. Yeah.
Thank you, Bill. Sorry, I'm sort of trying to answer questions where I can. Thank you to those who have submitted questions for us already. If yours was kind of a specific question to your specific setup or organization, I tried to answer you directly in the Q&A. We also have at least one question, which if I could invite everyone to come back on screen now, we will move into the Q&A period. And I have some questions lined up for you, but I actually think that this first question from Kelly McQuinn is really fabulous because it's something that I know that we've all considered. So Kelly's places of resistance are cost of filming and production versus obviously making back the money and making revenue. How did you approach that question? Obviously, I can talk a little bit about how we did it ourselves. We did a lot of audience surveys. We did a lot of data collection in the beginning, but we would love to hear specifically how you did that for these two shows.
Sure, well, go ahead, Bill. No, go ahead.
Yeah, we had very conservative revenue projections when we first started. And as a result, the production costs were certainly less than a fully staged production was. I mean, when we went to SAG, you know, we were on the bottom tier. We were, you know, the low budget production film contract that we were on. We were pleasantly surprised with revenue. We had the rights contract for that performance. We were limited in how many tickets we could sell, and it was basically like a sellout. So we were pleasantly surprised with how we were able to do revenue-wise for that production, and saving cost on the production end as well.
Bill, did you market just to your subscribers, or were you able to reach a new audience with it?
We were absolutely able to reach a new audience. We had a lot of people that had never heard of us, never seen us before, either from the Wall Street Journal production or from national ads that we ran with the trailer. You know, it helps that it was a known quantity, that show, because it was a Pulitzer Prize finalist and had a really successful New York production, was known, right? And so there was an audience hungry to finally get to see this very timely production. It was also, you know, post-election, you know, trying to understand conservatism was very timely as well. So all of that, I think, helped us reach a new audience.
I'd say it was a very similar perspective for Actors Theater. So naturally, as we were kind of redoing our entire fiscal year budget last year, a big part of that was just the recognition that just as all of us, how we interact with streaming video platforms, that you know, people would not necessarily be willing to pay a $45 to $60 ticket price for a live streaming or on-demand production. That's just not consumer behavior that we know that people do. So, you know, we were lucky enough to, as a nonprofit, be able to recognize that you know, we were going to be relying heavily on our contributed income for the year. And having never done this before, we just started out with a very conservative revenue base for each of these productions. Most of them have surpassed the goals that we had originally had, especially with the one affiliate that we've been able to bring on for one of our productions was very helpful and very remunerative and successful for us. But yeah, I would say, you know, just I think keeping the ticket prices down, keeping the barrier to entry down, especially in a year where our primary focus was being able to stay connected to our community. We knew it was not going to be a gangbuster year for revenue for Actors Theater. And so we just said, how do we keep in people's heads? How do we keep connected to them? How can we provide them an experience of community when we're not able to be together? And that was kind of the first and foremost objective of each of these projects.
So one of the points that we actually discussed when the three of us were together was there is a much more conservative budget when put towards these capture contents. It's nowhere close to having to build entire sets, rehearse entire cast. And obviously you're seeing that a lot of the shows that have been recorded successfully so far tend to be smaller format. But what I would also say to that is part of the point of the affiliate network is the opportunity to rev share, I think ultimately should create a greater appetite for risk, because now you know you're not just distributing to your small audience, there is a potential to go out nationally and even internationally. So with Menopause, for example, we already had the material pre-recorded, so it's just about negotiating the rights with the unions. And sometimes you would have to do that same negotiation with the rights holders. But one thing that I think we should all be looking at is if you've got productions that you're already slated to do, trying to get the rights to film them since you're already going to be producing them. And then that way, after you've made your money from the live performance, there's an opportunity to increase your revenue with sharing with venues around the country who may very well not be producing that play or musical anytime soon or ever. And this becomes an opportunity for them to offer an additional component to their audiences.
We also, with Menopause Musical, we surveyed audiences. When COVID happened, when it shut down, when everything started shutting down, we were canceling shows. We canceled our Las Vegas sit down, and we asked our patrons, we just said, would you want to stream this? How would you want to stream it? Do you want to see it live? Do you want to see it on demand? And we really leaned hard into that data. And we also were quite conservative in our projections as well. One thing that I would love if we could talk specifically about is really in marketing, what strategies worked particularly well for you? I know for us, we did a lot of digital. I can talk about that, but I'd love to hear from both of you, specifically because you also reached a lot, as you know, Bill, you already said this, you reached a lot of audiences beyond just your subscribers, just beyond your local patrons. So how did you do that? And is that changing the way that you're relating to your audiences going forward, or cultivating digital audiences, knowing that it's kind of just beyond the geographic scope of what's immediately around you?
Yeah, similarly for us, pretty much our entire marketing budget for these productions this past year were all digital, and the vast majority of that were social spend. And what we did early on that was really important to us was a clear segmentation of our audiences, putting together a subscribers and regular single ticket buyers, people that were already familiar with Actors Theater, but also recognizing that if we were going to reach beyond Louisville, beyond the people that had always been coming to our shows, there was a natural detachment from brand that we needed to allow to happen with each specific production. And so allowing the work to speak for itself and speak to interest groups and speak to things that are actually important to the people that are watching them, we experimented a lot with how can we reach specifically people that have never heard or engaged with Actors Theater whatsoever, and just have a trailer for the production appear on their Facebook page or their Instagram. So, what we found with our subscribers and single ticket holders was much more a level of camaraderie, support, that they wanted to support Actors Theater, regardless of what the actual content of the work was. And then dichotomously, you had people from the communities that felt as though they, really could identify with the story of Where Do We Sit on the Bus, getting together and having watch parties, sharing that trailer with their friends. So it was just a completely different kind of engagement for these two different groups and how they came to the work.
Yeah, I echo that entirely. Yeah, social was a huge part of our what we did, and testing out a number of different of segmented groups. People who were theater students who therefore had known the show was a large part, but also people who went once, the show is already well reviewed in the New York Times, so targeting New York Times readers. And then once we got a review in the New York Times, the same kind of thing. And really it allows us to, we all know Facebook advertising allows you to really experiment and target really specifically. But we also maintained a local focus with some of our advertising because we know we're going to be back in person at some point, and we want to make sure we keep that connection with the local community. And so it's just always about, slicing and dicing the audiences and tweaking the messages to reach those different folks. And the trailer and the reviews are really the 1-2 punch of getting those people interested.
Yeah, I'll just to add on to that, I totally agree. The trailer was much more important than it had been for previous in-person productions. And we would rely much more heavily on the work that we produced for our magazine, the written work that we would do prior to shows opening, and being a visual audio presentation, it was essential to getting people interested in this.
We did also do lots of behind the scenes stuff on our website. We had one of our performers, did a journal entry of being in the Poconos and seeing bears and filming. And so we but by far the most important thing was that trailer and the reviews.
So there's a question here. Ashley, do you see this one?
Yeah, I'm going to do that one next. But I wanted to just, in teeing this up, so the question is from Karen Stein. This is a great question. So thank you for sharing your experiences. Are presenters actively programming for virtual productions for the near future and beyond? You're sharing great experiences, but it's retrospective. So that is part of where we're shifting this conversation to kind of what has worked and what are we looking at going into fall. So I would love to kind of shift the discussion in that way going forward for the rest of our time. I know both of you are right now are solely programming digital. All the way through, I think, as far as the summer, we have a lot of clients that are coming to us who are programming right now for fall digital. So I think that this hybrid conversation is just getting started. I'm wondering what considerations both of your organizations are taking as you're looking at reopening for digital versus in person versus hybrid. So if you could just speak about that a little bit, we would love to hear your future plans.
Sure. So I'll jump in and just say, and not that we've all gone through these processes over the last year where I think all of us as organizations have had these incredible realizations. And one of the realizations that Actors Theater has had, first and foremost, is that we are a theater company, but the way in which we're going to be presenting work, even beyond the pandemic, is going to take a transmedia approach. And what we mean by that is that we are going to take every piece of content and storytelling that we want to tell, and we're going to match it with the platform that best tells the story, best starts conversation with our audience. And so that might not always be live in person on a stage with the audience watching productions. So this, it was necessitated to start by COVID. But as an organization, we're now we want to be really first and foremost a content company, a company that is making hyper-local content for Louisville that engages them in conversation, whether that is going to be outside in a concert venue, whether that is on your computer at home or in a virtual reality headset. You are going to come to expect moving art that speaks to where we live and the moment that we find ourselves in right now. So not that everyone is going to be interested in doing digital work after the pandemic ends, but we're also using it as a hedge right now because things do still feel very much fluid for us here in Kentucky about when the restrictions are going to be lifted, and beyond that, just when it's actually going to feel safe to be able to program. And in many ways, doing digital and digital video is now become the safe choice, or the more stable choice, I should say, in terms of knowing that this is something that we're going to be able to share with our audiences, regardless of whether there's a flare-up of COVID or any other pandemic or issue that society may face.
Yeah, we're involved with the musical Six, and from the very early stages in London, there was a little bit of a battle with equity in allowing there to be filming on the curtain call. And they were able to get that in the UK, and ultimately in the US, it sort of became part of the show. that at the sort of big mega mix at the end, all the people in the audience would break out their cell phones. As a result of that, that show blew up, and it blew up on Twitter. It blew up especially on TikTok. And it was, other than Hamilton, and I think there were weeks where it even surpassed Hamilton, it was the most downloaded cast album. Now, having been there and seeing that entire process play out, Six, the musical, was in one tiny off West End theater in the UK. So that popularity could only have happened through sharing. And these are the kinds of things that we have to take control over if we want to continue to compete in our industry, because the reality is there are a lot of forms of entertainment that are training people to sit on their couch with a remote control. And our imagination tells us, well, we're the counter to that because, you come here and you have this powerful live experience. And that's true. Nothing competes against that. But we've got to find a way to get them from there to where we are. And as we go out to woo a whole new generation of potential theater goers, we've got to introduce ourselves. We've got to create and share content with them, and then create brand awareness that makes them want to say, wow, I already love this material. Now I want to take that next step and see it live. And I think that this is a huge opportunity. So the conversation as to whether or not, it's virtual or live, we've got to realize that our worlds are merging. And the more we control that narrative and get out in front of it, the better and healthier we are as an industry moving into the future.
I agree with all of that, Seth and Zach. I would also add that one of the things we've learned is how much more accessible we can be online. It's much easier to have audio descriptions and captioning for all of our productions online. And I think keeping in connection with that, with an audience that needs more accessible services is really important going forward. But I echo exactly what Zach's saying, that the important thing for us is our story and our actors and our performers. And so the best way that we can serve those stories, if part of that is digital, that's what we'll do. And we want to keep transforming and being provocative.
That was a good question in here from Chris.
So there is a question. I can't speak to each individual rights or licensing thing specifically because the combinations are quite different. But I will touch on how we can do this in the platform when I move into the demo shortly. I know that Bill, for example, you were under probably a more restrictive rights agreement with Heroes than some of our other shows that we've seen on the platform. I don't know if you can speak to that just a little bit. I know that we can't answer your question specifically, Chris, for your specific kind of setup, but I will also chat you an answer as well. I don't know if you can.
I have a couple of thoughts for him, but go ahead. Go ahead and I'll come back.
Yeah, I mean, the only real restriction that impacted me on the marketing side was about the limit to the number of streams. And it was, and I think what we're going to see that with equity going forward as well, the idea that they don't want us to exceed, so some rights organizations and some contract agreements don't want you to exceed what you would have been able to sell in person. So it's very much in flux though. And I think, as equity had a new announcement last week that we're following, and I'm sure everybody's following. And so I think it's gonna change over the next few months, both with rights and contracts.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I mean, part of the challenge, and it's an ongoing conversation in the industry, is normally there was theater live rights, and that was this whole separate thing. Usually there was a particular agent that represented those and particular licensing houses that represented those. Then there was the film rights, which went to television agents, film agents, an entire different department, an entire different conversation. And now all of a sudden we have this very gray area in between those two things, which is why you saw that clash between SAG and AEA. So this is very new terrain, but I will say that one thing that is definitely happening is that the industry is taking note of the profit potential of being able to broadcast theatrical events without believing that they're going to take away or in any way diminish the value of film and TV rights down the road. In fact, I think the opposite will ultimately be considered in that conversation. You will increase the awareness and the value of your brand through these kinds of efforts. And that will only help artists with their television and film rights eventually. But this is a really new idea for our industry because those two things used to live in very different worlds.
I will also say for you know, when you're talking to rights holders, there is no doubt, without getting into specifics, that several of the productions that we've been able to have streaming over the course of this year have actively benefited the rights holders in terms of their ability to get their projects actually licensable with some of the larger licensing companies. Like there's one group in particular that I think it's because of the Actors Theater production that they're actually able to hopefully get it published and out to other theaters. So yeah, I think exposure is kind of, you know, it's the same way in which, not that anyone is pirating music, but you know, when music gets pirated online, there's a huge growth in that artist's, you know, preponderance. So yeah, there is a sense of like rising boats, right?
And I'll give a personal example. Right before our production, the original New York production did a reading of Heroes of the Fourth Turning on Zoom with the original cast. And we were very nervous. Oh, is that going to take away any of the energy of our production? And the exact opposite happened. That brought more people who knew about the show, wanted to see a new version of the show. We had people who saw that reading, wanted to see our production as well. And so, yeah, I completely agree.
Just anecdotally, you know, one of the things I always talk to my team about is we sort of worry about oversaturation and we worry about all these different things, but here's the reality. We in the theater business, even with our incredibly successful shows, end up playing to like 0.02% of the population out there. So anything we can do to reach more people is important. And I will also say that every one of the major licensing houses has gone into some kind of a partnership with the streaming platform. We're working with them on certain properties. We're just working with MTI right now on Breathe, which is the new musical that came out. So that tells you that there's been a major shift in the industry here. When the licensing houses, whose jobs have always been to suppress these things and to keep it on a very narrow track, are suddenly getting on board and making partnerships with streaming platforms, then clearly they're seeing that there's a new direction to the future in this.
So I hate to shift the conversation over, but I do want to make sure that we have time to do this demo. Our guests will stay on as panelists. So if you have other questions and if we have time at the end, please feel free to again use that Q&A function to send us questions. You can also send me questions as I run through the demo as well. And I'll get to them when I can switch over to the Q&A box. But I want to thank you, Bill and Zach, so much for joining us and for this great conversation. I think it's been really helpful for us to hear really what's worked for you. And thank you for taking the time to be here with us.
We'll hide as you do your demo.
Yeah, you can hide so you don't have to stare at yourself on the screen. So I'm just going to switch over. I'm going to switch over and talk a little bit about the platform now. So Seth kind of already got into a lot of these different points, but this platform is really created for producers by people who are producing content. So almost all of the features that I'm going to show you came either from us or from one of our clients. Many of the features came from Actors Theater suggestions themselves as well. Two really key things about our platform that's slightly different from other platforms that are currently on the market. We did not want customers to have to go out to another piece of software to engage with it. We wanted really for our patrons to feel like they were inside of our digital environment the whole time, not downloading an app, not having to kind of go through extra steps. So everything that you see is customizable, white label, and everything is also able to be secured at a pretty granular level. So we can customize the back end to meet your individual rights requirements. So we kind of touched on this broadly, but everybody's under different agreements. So all of them and all of the union contracts, those requirements can be met using the software. So this is an example of a show where the landing page is branded specifically just for one production or one performance. Breathe is a new musical that was announced yesterday, written by Jodi Picoult, lots of Broadway stars in it. We'll talk a little more about this. But I also wanted to show you an example of a theater. So this is Wilma's page, and this can be branded again as a landing page for a theater. So it can really be customized either way here. In either case, you would see down here at the bottom anything that's currently for sale, and then this initiates the payment process. I'm going to walk us through what the full payment process looks like using the platform. However, you can use your own box office software, which would bypass these features. Also, we are developing a Tessitura integration, and we've just launched a Spectrex integration, meaning that if you're using either of those platforms, you can go ahead and fold us into your payment checkout process and just go ahead and create all of your viewing links on demand from Tessitura or your Spectrex box office. So I'll talk a little about how this looks on the back end, but just for the purpose of showing this example, if you come down here, you can see that this show has a few different options. Again, as we mentioned earlier, there's an on-demand pre-order. There's also opening night live packages. If I was to click here, it would take me over to the checkout page. Again, staying within the customer's kind of branded skin here. And then ultimately, after we complete the payment, it generates your unique link to view. So if I click on this link, this is also emailed to the customer. Again, if you're using your own point of sale system, this happens within Spectrex or Tessitura, or if you're not using those software, you can also import your customer's data into the back end as well. When the user clicks on that link, they're taken to your player landing page. In this case, this is a pre-sale, so this show is not yet available. If the show was available, it would look something like this. This is the demo of Menopause the Musical. Again, everything, as you can see, is totally customizable here. Clicking through to the player page, the video will automatically play unless you've set it to start at a specific time or if it's a live stream. And we also have options for chat and taking donations on this page. So everything that you see is customizable. All the skinning, text, everything is editable on the back end. The player itself will pull your video in at the highest quality you provide to us, which could be up to 4K video, and then it's going to serve it back to the customer by automatically detecting your user's bandwidth connection of their local internet connection. So you don't have to worry about, like, if someone's on dial-up, are they going to be able to watch? Yes, they will. They may not get the 4K video, but if their internet speed increases while they're watching, we'll automatically flip over and detect the ability to take a higher quality video. We can also do captioning and in English or multi-language captioning as a VTT file. And as Bill also said, we've had clients doing audio described video as well. So flipping over to the back end of the system, that was the customer journey. So as you can see, it's all one click. It's a unique link. It's a password protected link, but we've hidden the password component so the user actually doesn't have to know that they're logging in. But on the back end, you can see that this was actually the link that we just viewed, this Performance Menopause the Musical demo. And you can see that I started to view the show. So everything in this screen that you're managing here is your customers. And if you were using the Spectrex or Tessitura integration, it would note in payment status that those orders came from your system. If you're using our point of sale system, it would just say the payment status as completed or pending or unpaid if they abandoned their cart. And then you can also import your customers in, again, if you're not using either of those two softwares, or if you're, like, let's say you're uploading a press comp list, you could do that in this screen as well. So this is where you would manage your customer's experience. You can edit your customer here. So you could, if you needed to change them to a different performance, you could do that without affecting their unique link to view. Or if for some reason they've exceeded their view count or their ticket has expired, but they need it refreshed, you could do that manually here as well. Lastly, on this screen, something that, because this is a unique link to view, each link that your customer receives is specific to that person. So on this screen, you can actually open up the customer's unique link, which helps you troubleshoot if for some reason they're saying, like, I'm having an error, I don't understand, I'm locked out of the show. You would actually be able to click on this little blue button here and open up this person's specific link. Moving over just to the performance editor here, this is where you would control everything related to the show. So if you think of a performance as the container which holds your video, you can limit that performance based on time, so expiring after a certain on-demand or live streaming viewing period. After a certain number of views, you can have different performances that appear differently. Like let's say you had a sponsored production. So we work with AARP. So we would simply duplicate this performance here and do our branding for AARP. I won't walk through all of this because there are quite a lot of features on the back end here, but this is where you would select whether it's live or pre-recorded and then enter in all of the details related to the show. Another thing that's interesting that you can do is if your video is not ready, you can still have it in the system. You could set your performance to begin on the day that your video is ready. And then if you needed to swap your video, it would not affect your customer's individual unique link to view. We also go through all of this setup with our customers when you onboard with us. So we help you get this set up. Last thing I'm going to show you, which our current clients have not even seen yet. This is a demo of our new reporting dashboard. So I will say this is all fake data that you're seeing here on our test site, but I wanted to show it because we're really trying to give you detailed reporting on both your sales and also on your users' engagement and behavior. So you can see here, we'll be tracking sales trends if you're using our point of sale or integrations, sales by outlet. So this is tracked marketing, for example, like a Facebook ad campaign. And then scrolling down, we are also tracking customer viewing data. So you can see here that in this demo, Sunday and Saturday were the highest or most frequently viewed times. Lastly, we have the affiliate content library, which we've talked a lot about. I won't go through all of the performances in here, but actually, sorry, I was in the test site. Let me move over to the real site. We have a lot of performances in here. Where Did We Sit on the Bus is currently an affiliate, as well as Menopause the Musical, which we've discussed today. Some Like It Hip Hop is a wonderful production by Zoo Nation in the UK, the first time it's available in the US. And we also have She the People from Second City. And Breathe, which is a brand new show. Again, this is very exciting. If you're interested in this show specifically, you can message us and we'll tell you more about it. But you can browse content here. You can see when things are available. So you can book this show and sell it between May 7th and July 2nd. It also has a 1-week exclusive run for affiliates, and you can watch trailers and you can also request to book the show here in this screen as well. So that was a little bit of a fast and furious overview of the back end of the system. If you're interested in seeing a demo, we're also happy to do that one-on-one or with your organization. I will put my contact information in the chat as well. We're very, very excited about this show, Breathe, though. I wish I had more time to talk about it specifically, but this will be going direct to streaming. This is a great example of generating interest for a show virtually with the potential to later license it. So our affiliates will have an exclusive 1-week period to stream this show to your patrons ahead of the national release on May 14th. As well as opportunities to do potentially cast parties locally with the cast and some really exciting interactivity. So if this is something you're interested in, please do reach out to us. I know we only have 2 minutes left. I would love to kind of toss it back to Seth to close us out. Sorry, you only get 1 minute, but thanks, Seth.
No problem, no problem. First of all, Zachary, Bill, thank you so much. Robbie, APAP, anyone else who's watching, please feel free to reach out to us. I know that, an hour like this brings up more questions than answers. And just to finish here with Josh's, or there was a question here, curious about the announcement of Netflix showing Diane on before the Broadway opening. At the end of the day, I think it comes down to content. I think it comes down to whether or not people respond to content. That will always be the barometer in our industry. But I have no doubt in my mind that that musical will have a better chance of success on Broadway because of its release on Netflix and not the other way around. If it's not material that people respond to and it doesn't do well on Broadway, I will hate to hear people have the conversation of, oh, well, they oversaturated because they came out on Netflix. I know that's not the case. If it generates interest, they will sell a lot more tickets to the live production without a doubt. And then just lastly, I wanted to say that we as an industry have to sort of realize that there's something very unique to our voices. And just because we're seen on a TV screen or a computer, that doesn't make us television or films or Netflix or any of those other things, because we in our industry, we tend to attack subjects in a very different way. We're usually more relevant and timely because we can go from writer to creation to audience faster than almost any other industry. So this format for us is a way of reaching those audiences that have been reached for all those years, but bringing our very unique angle of theater and storytelling to a wider audience, which I think everyone who's on this call, I'm sure, is someone who feels passionately about that. So we hope we can help you facilitate that. We think there's a bright future with it. And obviously we're looking forward just to getting back to live theater as well as virtual.
Thank you, Seth. Thanks again, Zach and Bill. And thank you to Robbie and APAP for having us today.
Thanks all. Stay safe. We'll see you soon.
So that'll close us out. The recording will be available on our website after the webinar concludes. And Ashley, Seth, and all our panelists, thank you so much. I'll do the awkward Zoom wave to close us out. Thanks again.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thanks. Bye.